Well, welcome everyone again. Thank you for participating in that poll. That was great. It's good to see where everybody's kind of coming from. Like I said, I'm Colleen Stewart. I'm the communications coordinator at the Food Alliance. Freshly new, I think, still. So I'm meeting everybody and learning as I go on the fly, like Virginia is. And then I'm co-hosting here with Daniel Prial. He can introduce himself.
Hi, folks. Yeah, Daniel Prial. I am a specialist with the ATRA Sustainable Ag Project, which is a national, in many ways, we used to be called the alternative to cooperative extension because we were pushing sustainable ag back in the late 80s. And we're still trying to stay on the cutting edge and help farmers and gardeners and homesteaders just really build sustainable businesses and hobbies for themselves, both environmentally, financially, you name it. But I'm a communications guy, and I'm really interested in how farmers talk about food, how nonprofits talk about food, and how we can really achieve some lasting change just by saying different things. So I'm excited to be here, and it's great to see you all. I also just want to throw in, I am fully aware that we've now been a year at this whole Zoom stuff, replace stuff with your word of choice. And if you're interested in joining in and like chomping at the bit to discussion, we are all about that. And if you just want to sit back and relax and let this all wash over you and munch on your granola and have your mid-morning snack, that is 100% okay too. So come as you are, we're happy to have you. I think, Erin, can we, maybe we should give you a little bit of a spotlight too, real briefly. Erin is amazing and is on the backbone team of the New Hampshire Food Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
All right. So we'll just go over our desired outcomes of this session really quick. Really just focus, like Daniel said, on having a discussion, sharing with each other about our successes, what we're struggling with in terms of communications, and sharing, these kind of buy local, eat local movements and campaigns that have been sparked by the pandemic, really harvesting the momentum, as we keep saying, of those things, and those successes that we've had, and sharing resources. And so we want to kick it off with kind of the big question, as Daniel put it, to kind of discuss with everybody. So I'm going to put it up quickly so we can read it all together, and then we'll kind of have a discussion. Everybody can pop in, put your answers in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and say something. So let me share that with everybody, and Daniel can take it away with his little intro to the question.
Yeah, I guess just as background, when Colleen and I were sitting down trying to pull this session together, it was really obvious to us that something very different happened last year, right? 2020 was weird, and markets were falling apart and other markets were exploding. Hearing some just sales numbers from different organizations, like Three Rivers apparently had like a 5 times increase in sales, something like that. Someone should double check that number for me. But we're talking 500% increase, right? Even if that's remotely in the realm, that's wild. And yet at the same time, we saw restaurant markets collapse. We saw institutional markets collapse. This was a really fun and weird year for local food. And I guess my big question and sort of the framing picture that we want to put over this whole session is, how much of it did we orchestrate? We being food people, we being farmers, we being institutions, we being nonprofits, right? How much did we direct people toward buying local versus how much did this just happen to us, right? For the grammar nuts, is this an active sentence or a passive sentence this last year? That's the big question, because if we have an inkling of an answer to this question, it informs the direction that we're going to take this next year, right? If the answer is, this was a pandemic and everybody just responded to the pandemic and our actions were pointless, well, then next year it should be, let's go make another pandemic and we'll be fine for local food. But if this answer is like, the answer is that we did something. what did we do? Let's capture that and let's learn from this last year so that we can expand what we do. I'll also fully admit there's no way that this is an either or question. Right? This is a spectrum, and where on this spectrum we all ended up is going to be different in every situation. But before oh, yeah, please.
Hi, it's Mary from Belknap Food Shed.
Yeah.
One of the things that we experienced was, and just real quickly, Belknap Food Shed is like a mini Three Rivers farmers market. It's the same platform, online, virtual farmers market, weekly curbside pickup, or home delivery. And we are located out of Meredith. So we've been serving Meredith, Laconia, Guilford, Loudoun, and Tilton. But one of the real common things that we heard, despite having taken out ads, despite having as active a social media presence as we could, despite working with Plymouth State University marketing program and getting an intern and trying to push it all forward, we keep hearing, I didn't know you were here. This is so great. I don't have to drive to 17 farms. I can now get it all in one place. So that's clearly not an answer to your threshold question, but that is probably the single biggest theme from the customers we've been working with that we've been hearing. So it seems to be a reflection that people are looking for local, but they don't know where to look collectively.
And thank you, Mary, for starting us off. This is the question that I just want to entertain, just throw out to the group, whatever your reactions are, your questions about this framing. Maybe you're having a moment of divine inspiration that you want to share with us all. But thoughts, like what, I also invite folks to check the chat. Other people are putting some information there. There are comments about, yes, this is the big question, what actually happened. Annalena, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You said that you're actually researching this. I'd love to hear more about that. Jen Risley from the Monadnock region is saying that this has been just part of a movement that they're working toward. So please, this is the frame I think I would like to invite us all to play with today. But you're all adults, take yourself off mute, jump in.
I'll jump in. I'm from the Littleton Food Co-op, and our co-op did very well this year as far as the numbers were concerned. We had such an uptick of sales. It was sort of unbelievable. We very much promote local. Thank goodness for local farms. I know the Roby farm, as far as meat, we had meat in our store. And we've always promoted local, always. And what my focus right now is how do we create more local? We have a lot of local, but how can we create more? Because I don't see our food system as really being able to support, say, us up in the North Country. We have some farms, but not nearly enough to support, food for everyone in our region. So that's what I'm looking at. And we will continue to inform like we always have, maybe uptick that a little bit.
So this is Lisa Moore, and building on what Lori Mahar said in the chat, what I found was that some of the local farmers actually are the ones that, they grew all this lettuce for a summer camp, and all of a sudden the summer camp didn't happen. So they're the ones themselves that went out to the stores and all these other places and promoted themselves to say, hey, I've got this product, do you want it? And so at least that was what I found for some of the farmers that we work with, that they kind of all did it on their own. And then, the word spread that, oh, this is, the local farms lettuce, not across the country lettuce.
I don't know if this is, well, as a farmer, there's about 10 different lists, I think, that my farm is listed on. So there's seafood maps, there's different food maps, there's different listing sites. But one thing I noticed during the pandemic was that my neighbors, my immediate neighbors, didn't know that the farm 2 doors down actually sold meat. And I was like, well, I trade my oysters there every day. Like, that's how I get my food. So is there, like, when people are thinking about all these different maps and all these different listings, a way to, I don't know, put a marker or some similar sign that says, like, this is a local food producer or a local compost producer, a local business that's contributing to the food market, that people would then have that visual awareness of going to a location and finding all these local farms? I mean, I don't know if it's smart to have phone numbers on the side of the road, but if it was something like New Hampshire Food Map, for example, I know that's a little bit different, but, or a producer map or something like that, that people just start to see it everywhere and say, like, wow, there is a lot of food locally. Whether they stop at every shop, that's one thing, but they could go online and find out where those things are sort of being brought to.
Mhm.
I think some common note like that would be really good. I mean, this is, I'm from Gilmanton's own market, which is beginning our 5th year now as a nonprofit farm market. We're open 9 months a year. Last year, of course, we did a fast turnaround and went on to pre-order and curbside pickup for the first bunch of months. And we have the same issue. We've been open near a town center in a couple of different places, but for 4 full years. And we have people who live half a mile away who say, oh, wow, we didn't even know you exist. And I do the social media and all that. And one of the problems is in a rural area, there aren't really good outlets for reaching people. I do Facebook bunches of times a week in about 6 different Facebook sites. And that's good for the old people who read Facebook, but not so good for other people who don't read Facebook. You know, there's one newspaper that kind of covers the area, the Laconia Daily Sun, but we can't really afford it. And it's not clear people read the ads. Nobody tweets around here. I have a Twitter, you know, I use Twitter a lot, and I tried doing that, but I think there are 3 people in the county who use Twitter. And so, you know, trying to figure out, we put flyers in all the local places in the local library and everything. So I think that's probably common to a lot of us in a by definition rural area of where do you reach people and what are the media that you can use, because you can do all this stuff, but if people aren't going for it and reading it, they won't know, they'll stumble across you.
Mhm. That's a great point. I think the digital world is very saturated right now, and sometimes it feels impossible to get out of it. And I think we always need to keep in mind that there is benefit to the poster up at the coffee shop or something like that. You know, that kind of style of marketing is not to be forgotten, I think. Great point.
I want to encourage folks to continue putting your thoughts and questions into the chat. And if you aren't following the chat while we have this conversation, please do. There's some amazing stuff going in there. My apologies to Three River. I said 500%. It was a meager 400% increase this year. But we also have one quick conversation to have, and then we'll have a more focused conversation. But Colleen, I think I'd like to turn it over to you for just a moment to talk about where we're going with this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again. Just go do a quick overview of kind of our communications team at the Food Alliance and kind of what our pandemic response was in terms of communications. So I'll share my screen quickly, and we'll do a little talking about communications team. So our communications team at the Food Alliance, we meet on a monthly basis. We will be starting a shared communications channel. So anyone who is in the network of these communications professionals or not communications professionals, but if you are one of those people that is working at your farm stand or your local organization that does social media or does communications work, you're more than welcome to be a part of that, to share what you have going on individually, so everyone else can kind of create that web of connection and sharing all the great work that's happening within the food system. The communications team, we also are, providing some peer-to-peer learning, some professional development, sharing tools and tricks and resources that work for your communications efforts. kind of, again, helping to amplify all of the great work that's happening. And, at a certain point, getting to some consistent messaging across all the work we're doing. How do we talk about local? Like, for example, Vermont just reestablished their definition of local, and not saying we have to go that far, but what does it mean when we say local in New Hampshire? What does that mean to all of us? And it might make us think of a different definition every time. So getting us all on the same page, so we're actively talking about the same stuff. Our communications team also coordinates New Hampshire Eats Local Month in August, which I'll talk about in a few seconds. And we also promote the narrative messaging work from Food Solutions New England. So it's really important to not forget that we are a part of a region of food systems from Massachusetts and Maine, and being able to reach that food vision goal of 35 by 2035, feeding New Hampshire, feeding our region. That's a really important thing for us to remember as communications folks, to be going across those borders and seeing what's working there, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, all that. So New Hampshire Eats Local Month, like I said, it occurs each August, and it's a month-long celebration of local food and New Hampshire farmers and producers. So it is 1 month long. It's kind of our focused effort every year of, really driving home the fact that, like, this is where you can buy local food. This is who's growing it. This is who's, using it in their restaurant, kind of really dedicating that month to celebrating all of the harvest and what's happening. But during the pandemic, and this actually happened before I arrived, but I've been so excited to learn about the efforts that were going on before I started with the Food Alliance. But the goal was to create New Hampshire Eats Local Month as a year-round initiative to support our network partners, provide resources and communications and shared messaging to get people in the step of eating locally year-round. Like, what does that mean? Eating seasonally? Where, in the dead of winter, which we just went through, where do we find local produce? Where can I go to a farmer's market that's indoors, when they make that transition, all of that stuff, and kind of being a hub for that communication year round, not just during August when, all the tomatoes are ripe and ready to eat. It's important for us to continue that. So for 2021, my goal in taking this kind of New Hampshire Eats Local initiative on, these are my goals for communications, is consistency across all of our channels, consistently reaching our audience and sharing things that are happening across the network and in the food system. And hopefully that would create for us to be a trusted source of information. And we think we're all striving for that, kind of being that trusted source. And I think part of that is being consistent on your messaging and consistently reaching people. Another part of that is being a good eater when it comes to communications, reading the articles, reading the newsletters, signing up for, e-blasts and emails, following on social media. I know we did just talk about how dense that digital atmosphere is, but you have to be a part of it in order to know what's happening. So that's something that's my goal for 2021. I'm also thinking a lot about meeting our eaters, our local eaters, where they are. Some people may not know about, cauliflower, or how to eat it, or how to roast it, or whatever it is, or where to buy it. And, meeting those people, educating them instead of kind of giving them the Brooklyn coffee shop theory, which is, someone shows up and they don't feel like they are, being educated. They feel like they're being, talked down to, and it's never going to be something that I put out into the world. It's always going to be an educating experience to make people feel welcome into this. And part of that is telling stories, is, telling the stories of our farmers, of our food producers, and telling the whole story, telling it from the seed to the harvest, and showing that connection and how we can bring people in at any point of the process to kind of show them, oh, wow, I understand that. It's easy to understand. I know the story, and I can now interact with it because I understand it. And the last thing is, taking those stories and making those connections with other media out in the world, and as well as other organizations who have audiences that are looking for this information. And and helping people, more different types of people come into, our food system and into our network, and understanding the work that we're doing. So that is a little bit about what we're doing at the Food Alliance and within our communications team and within our network. I urge all of you to be a part of it in any way that you can, and we'll follow up with some information after the gathering and how to be a part of that. So any questions about that or thoughts? I know there was some stuff going on in the chat that I couldn't see while I was sharing my screen, so please feel free to shout it out.
Yeah, lots of good chat going on. So it's hard to focus on reading and listening, but but I know one of the biggest things that we need help with is marketing. And me not having the time to focus on marketing. So I do my best with social media, sharing, creating events and creating posts and sharing and posting it to all, surrounding several towns on their community pages. And for the most part, that works very well. We get a lot of new customers that way. But we really could use, especially not having the grants in the last 2 years because of the pandemic and not having any money to pay for the grants, which was very helpful for us because it helped with postcards and things like that. Mm-hmm. And ads in the newspaper. So, any type of marketing support is really what we're looking for, however, to get that message out. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it's true. It's that we all feel strapped for time. And what we're going to do next is kind of talk about the different campaigns and projects that we saw happen across the food system this year, and get, hopefully everyone gets inspired by maybe something someone else did and incorporate that into their marketing and social media, but also to share resources like what tools are you using, what scheduling apps are you using, MailChimp, or using Constant Contact. Little secrets can kind of help. And I know it's a big undertaking, but they can help streamline your marketing and social efforts.
Functionally, for the purposes of our getting together today, if you put a resource in the chat, take a moment and also throw it up on the Jamboard. If the chat has been on fire, and it has been a pleasure to follow along. And this is a section where you kind of choose your own adventure. Throw something on the Jamboard, and if you want to talk about it with the group, we can talk about it. If the next 5 minutes go by and the Zoom is entirely silent, that's not going to be a bad thing. It just means that the Jamboard is going to get super populated, and you can read and have a moment to observe what's on your screen. So this is sort of as you all are, and sort of how you'd like to best engage with this material. But we do have the 2 questions, strategies and changes and things that have actually happened. And the other question is opportunities for the future.
Mm-hmm. Mary, did you want to talk a little bit about Nextdoor? I have not heard of that platform, so I'd love to hear more about it if you are willing to chat about it.
Sure, yeah. I was first introduced to it probably 1.5 years ago by a friend who happens to have a farm in Vermont. And she received a notification on her phone while we were at a meeting in Brattleboro that there was a bear headed towards her beehives. So somebody put in the chat, it's usually more about lost cats. Well, we looked into it, and that's kind of what we've seen too. It's like asking for recommendations. I live in this neighborhood, who's got a painter they would recommend, or something like that. But yesterday I received an email, because we accept credit cards, from American Express, and they had a whole list of small business support tools that they're promoting. Mm-hmm. And one of them was one of those ad premiums that if you sign up for a free business account on Nextdoor, you get X amount of ads or whatever. And it had not occurred to me to use Nextdoor for advertising, but promoting a farmer's market and local food, maybe that's right up there with lost cats. maybe it is a good market channel. I don't know. So I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a creative response, is kind of taking something that you didn't think was supposed to be for the purpose that you're using it for and making it work. That's great. Awesome. Look at, see, everybody's on the Jamboard. This is great. Keep adding stuff. I see Maple Weekend on there. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to doing some Maple Weekend stuff this year. Awesome. I see Granite State Food Heroes also. Sarah, you're on here. That's one of my examples of a great framing campaign. So bravo to you and your team. I think that was awesome. For anyone who did not see that campaign, Sarah and her team solicited some food heroes essentially across the food access food system community, and to people to share their experiences and why why they thought that folks that they thought were doing a great job in their work there. So, and she would push it out on social media every day, was very consistent with it. And I think she had hundreds of responses, if I'm not mistaken. So that was really awesome. So bravo to Sarah and her team.
One of the things that has come up over the years as we continue to have these conversations about how to communicate better and support each other and learning about and marketing local food is branding. And the fact that New Hampshire doesn't really have a strong sort of New Hampshire grown or we have New Hampshire made, but it's not necessarily a super well-known I think, brand across the state. And whether or not this idea of the New Hampshire Eats Local kind of campaign, spreading that across the year, if that sort of branding would be something that people would be interested in participating in, that, I'm a member of New Hampshire Eats Local, and sort of participating in that as a statewide kind of movement, I guess. I'm just curious to hear what people think. I know that there are some kind of regional branding efforts that have happened. If folks have any experience or thoughts about that, I'd be really interested to hear.
This is Jen Risley. I just wanted to let you know that Massachusetts and New Hampshire both celebrate New Hampshire Eat, or they eat local in August. And so we're in the midst of rebranding our November, December promotion into a year-round promotion as well. And so the months of August and September are going to be Eat Local, and we're hoping that nationally people find a time during those months to land on that message. So I feel like we kind of turning a corner from celebrating statewide to maybe celebrating nationally those months. So just want to let people know that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. That's great. I think what Erin's point is a good one too. It's, maybe that's kind of what I was saying about shared messaging, and that could just be like having a little badge or something that, I'm a part of New Hampshire Eats Local. I support that with my business, and kind of turning that into our own little, local branding campaign. I like that idea a lot. Laura,
Grassroots branding.
Yeah,
Grassroots
branding. I like that.
Do it yourself.
DIY branding. Hey, I have a Canva account. I can make a logo. I'm here for it. I like New Hampshire Grows Local, Laura. Something I love about this New Hampshire Eats Local kind of phrasing is that you can insert any word between New Hampshire and local, and it kind of works well. So I like that. The flexibility that we'll be able to do something like that. Part of me wants to do a New Hampshire Grows Local campaign where, we focus on gardening at home, composting, something like that, because, we do all of this work across our different disciplines at the Food Alliance. So something like that would be really cool. All right, let's check out this Jamboard. Everybody is jamming. This is awesome. Look at all this stuff.
There's some really beautiful stuff on the Jamboard. People are talking about email lists that are working well, saving local instead of just shopping local, highlighting Granite State food heroes again, people responding to specifics. There's a point here about how a Vital Communities Guide was updated to include open during COVID. Right? Like little things like that made a big difference this year. For those of you, if any of you made it to the Harvest New England conference a week or two ago, there was a phenomenal bit on marketing there. And excuse me, the presenter was talking about how when you have open hours for a business, you need to actually take the time to go and update all of the different services that list your opening hours, right? So not all of these services will auto-populate based off of your website. And if your website isn't updated with your most current hours, you're also gonna have issues. So like if you do a Siri search, you just say, hey Siri, when is Laura's Fox Point Oysters open? That's gonna go to Yelp to get that information. So make sure that you have your Yelp account updated. And all of these like micro things. Yeah, is sharing that kind of information is something that I think the communications team can do in the future as well.
I agree. I think when we talk about marketing and social and communications, we get really, it's like, it's Instagram, it's Twitter, it's Facebook, and sometimes it's really just these little things, just making sure your hours are right on Google when people search you. You know, the biggest thing I've always been told is when people search something, it's, you know, farms near me, and for you to be able to come up, you have to have a Google account and all these things. So sharing that kind of professional development information is something I'd really like to focus on. I see someone put a podcast collaboration to highlight the work in the food system. We were talking about that earlier today, Aaron and Jennifer and I. So if anybody has...
You three talking about podcasts?
We tend to do that a little bit, but podcast, YouTube channel. I'd also love to hear about kind of, I mean, since we're all like communications adjacent people, what kind of media are we taking in right now? Are we tired of videos and Zoom and all that? Like, do we want to listen to something, you know, while we're walking outside? Just Jared made that point earlier, you know, a podcast, throw it on and go hiking and go exploring and go to the farmer's market. I'd love to hear more about that if anybody has thoughts about the types of media they enjoy listening to or viewing. And if anybody has a good radio voice and wants to be a podcast host, by all means, raise your hand.
I don't want to be a host, but I would like to listen to a podcast.
All right, well, maybe you'll be our first featured.
I don't know. You'd make a great podcast host, Laura.
No.
I don't want to call out Charlene, but the podcast was Charlene's idea several years ago.
Yeah, and I put it in this. Yeah.
Oh, you were the one who put it in. Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is Brett at Warner Public Market. We've had a podcast idea on our agenda for like a couple of years, and I don't think we're going to get to it anytime soon, but I think it'd be great to have more of a state focus. I mean, we were thinking about doing state issues and highlighting not just what we're doing, but stuff that's happening all around the state. And I guess I just wanted to share that if you do get that off the ground, another hat I wear is I am part of WNHN in Concord, a DJ there, and I think they would probably, you know, I'd be happy to pitch that idea to them of getting a spot to get that broadcast on the FM dial as well.
Awesome. That would be great. I think that's a forgotten medium right now, radio. People still listen in. So we always have to think about that. Radio, podcasts.
That's great. And I bet there are others who've been thinking about it too. So I think that's another example of collaboration and bringing all these minds together. Somebody had mentioned in a previous conversation that, you know, highlighting what's happening in New Hampshire, but also the region as we're trying to build out and develop our regional food system and learn and hear from what people are doing in other states too could really benefit us here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, no, the Hanover Co-op, they tried to get a podcast going. I think they did maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and I think maybe it's been put on the back burner a little bit, but they were starting to get that going at one point this past year.
Yeah.
It's not on the back burner. Alan is still working on it diligently. It
Oh,
just
nice.
he just takes a lot of time and to get the interviews, but they're still rolling.
Nice. It was great. I enjoyed it.
And any podcast suggestions, throw them in the chat. Any local ones that you know of? I know, Sarah, you said you Extension has podcasts. I know the gardening, Granite State Gardening podcast. Yep, there it is. Awesome. I'm definitely gonna add that to my queue for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, we were talking with Heidi too that maybe a New Hampshire Food Alliance UNH Extension like collaboration on a podcast could be great to bring in folks from across the region and the state.
There's a great podcast that I listen to that's really is informational for food producers, and that's Edible Alpha. It's out of, I think it's the University of Wisconsin, and it's headed up by a woman named Tara Johnson, who used to own a whey business. She used to produce products using whey, and it's extremely informational, even though it's based out of Wisconsin, and there certainly is some things that are applicable to Wisconsin. It's very informative to hear what businesses are doing, and it's a great resource for food producers, farmers. So it's called Edible Alpha. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Charlene. Great suggestion.
One of the things that somebody that was going to do a podcast and still will, but she found it a barrier. The quality of the sound of a lot of podcasts is really poor. And so she decided to wait on hold until she could get some professional audio behind her to do hers. And I'll just throw that out there as a comment, I guess.
Yeah, and that's, Lisa, why we haven't done anything, even though we've been talking about it for several years, is sort of lack of funding to actually hire somebody to do some audio. So yeah, I agree. It's got to be well done. Yeah.
I would also just chime in on the briefest things here. There, it's a spectrum. It's not an either or, because the equipment to get you a decent podcast is only in the couple hundreds of dollars. And like photography, it has to do with like the sound version of lighting, right? If you can sit in a quiet room or huddle under a blanket while you record something, you're going to get phenomenal sound quality in the same way as taking a photo on a sunny day, right? It's not as black and white as that. I would say, I say that only because there's this assumption that we need to spend thousands of dollars to hire a professional, but the audio editing equipment is free. Audacity, for those of you who are looking at it, is a phenomenal audio editing program. It's been free for well over a decade. And a couple $100 gets you a really good audio recorder.
And maybe I should have qualified that, Danielle. She was talking about interviewing people, kind of out in the field interviewing people, as opposed to in an office type setting or something like that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I see someone put on here a regional campaign, like a Department of Ag trail, like a farm trail. In my past life, I was in the Hudson Valley in New York, and that was something their tourism statewide was promoted quite a bit, was a farm trail. And I don't think there is one here. Does anyone have any thoughts about that or wants to share?
So I put that up. The Department of Ag does have, there's an ice cream trail. There's the I think a maple producer trail. They've got, I think, like 3 or 4 of them, but I would say that they're not really promoted. They're created but not promoted, and there's no form. And I traveled to the Quebec province quite a few years ago, and they had a tremendous, they had like an arts trail and an agricultural trail that, that was well marked, and you had the map, but then you also had signage all through the road systems. And I think that's where, you know, it gets to be a little bit different, difficult. I know New Hampshire made with travel and tourism, and I think has the open doors that they used to do, you know, pre-pandemic, for kind of the arts side of it. And I think that was done well, where they had signage and such. But I just think we can take what's existing and just build upon it, and help promote it in a better way.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for elaborating on that. That's helpful for me, at least, to know about that. Let's see, there's a lot going on. Sean, I know you're on here. I don't know if Morgan's also on here. I'd love to hear more about your guys' experience as a regional Eat Local, and kind of any thoughts you had, and maybe taking that campaign larger, and how does that been working for you guys?
Yeah, so I know Morgan is not on here, and she's super involved with the NH Eats Local month, so she could speak more to that. But actually, something I have been thinking of this session, it almost feels like, as far as getting in touch with people, like right now, we're sort of like getting past social media, which has been kind of like the dominant marketing method for, I don't know, we'll say the past 10 years or so. Now, we've relied on that a lot, in the same things that everyone else is doing too, like email lists and having accurate information on your website. Like, that's all well and good, but it almost feels like we're just getting to the point of like a breaking point of using social media as like a leading tool to communicate with people. So part of the conversation that we've just started internally at Seacoast Eat Local is like, what is that next phase? And I mean, we've talked about podcasts for a while here, but it almost feels like there's some other breakthrough that we need to be able to get in touch with people in a different way. And maybe it's just going back and starting the cycle all over again, because I think a couple people in comments earlier on were talking about how, you know, they did a direct mailer that had a coupon, and they only got like 4 or 5 people to bring that back. Like even that direct mail strategy doesn't seem to necessarily work all the time. And, you know, I put this on the Jamboard. So like, what is the right balance of working smarter versus harder? I think you have to find the right balance of those things, because if you start working too smart, then like, where is the hard work? And we see the hard work as having moments where you're connecting with people in really, really small groups, face-to-face, or one-on-one, face-to-face. Because we almost always turn somebody that's not familiar with local food or farms in our area, we almost always turn them into at least sort of an intermittent local food customer, versus, you know, you send out a social media post, the reach is 10,000 people, but how many people actually come to your event, or how many people actually take direct action based on that? So I think we're just now starting to think about focusing a lot more on that face-to-face interaction. And of course, like, that's what we're all hungry for too this year, is like getting out and finally being able to do small events again, put food in front of people, and just try things. And one thing that we've talked a lot about that, you know, this goes back, like, speaking of starting the cycle over again, goes back, I don't know, 30 years ago, whenever it was that Stonyfield started. You know, what Gary did to start his business was basically just make yogurt and set it up on the side of the road and just give samples to people. Like, that's the kind of experience that people want. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out. And like, how do we have that old-fashioned Stonyfield experience where we're taking different collections of food and demos and things from the public and just putting it in front of people so they can at least try it, experience it. You can teach them about it. Like that, again, almost always, it at least turns the person into, we'll say, a part-time customer of local food, versus just putting your message out to the masses and not really having, you know, that hard work or determination behind it that I think really pays off a lot. So that's kind of a direction that we're trying to head in, at least for this year. I'm not sure if that really answers your question, Colleen, but that was kind of a long-winded thought that I've had on my mind.
No, I think it's, we kind of all had that in the back of our minds, is that I'm doing social media every day. I'm sending the emails and I'm still talking to the same 10 people, 100 people, whatever, 1,000 people. And I think what I really took away from Laura's presentation yesterday was when she started selling oysters on the side of the road and people were coming out and trying oysters for the first time. Like that, and that kind of thing can be applied to all the different food businesses and organizations. So, you know, when we can, hopefully soon, fingers crossed, get out there and really start talking to people, shaking hands, quote unquote, with people and letting them know what's going on. I think that's a great point.
There's also an element here that's overlapping with a post someone put on the Jamboard that I'm just going to read out loud here. It says how to get people to self-identify as a local eater. I think we can borrow from any number of other groups that have built an identity. What is the identity of a local eater? Is it an elite liberal? And is this a barrier in New Hampshire? Right, this question of who's can afford to buy local, who is buying local, is there a barrier between those two things, and how do we market our way around that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question and thought to think about.
Yeah, high five from me to whoever put that on the
Yeah.
Jamboard.
Please chime in if you want to share more of your thoughts about that. Whoever put that up there, it's an important part of what we're doing. How do we reach those people? You know, meet people where they are. Like I said before, that develops in a variety of different ways.
I think that's a really great point. And I've definitely, you know, being a local food brick and mortar, seen that there is a cultural divide of who identifies with this or not. It's been something we've talked and thought about a lot, is how to break through that kind of misconception or kind of you know, a factor that's at play. And I thought, you know, maybe someone else could probably speak to this better, but I know before COVID, and COVID may have changed this, but there was a study that showed that, you know, farmers markets and CSAs had kind of plateaued nationally, and I think in New Hampshire as well for quite a few years. So how, as a state system or a regional system, can you know, we take local food up to that next level? And I think part of that is tapping into the population that doesn't consider themselves a local eater, but you know, could be, and it would probably like to be. I'd like to think. And I think you know, something that we've thought a lot about is going beyond that CSA and farmers market model to meet the customers a little bit more where they're at, their comfort range of, you know, they've gotten very used to supermarket convenience, and trying to meet them that with brick and mortars in kind of urban or main street locations that are 7 days a week. And I think like that might be, as a state and regional system, the way to kind of increase kind of the net participation would be to, and we're not alone. There's these models, small little kind of retail models are popping up all over the place. And I think also what it does too is it kind of relieves some of the direct marketing, while essential to our farms and producers, puts everything on the farmer, the marketing, the PR, the distribution, and probably takes a lot away hours that they could be producing more food to get to Littleton Food Co-op's point of like, we need more production. So if as a system, we could figure out how to take some of that marketing and responsibility away from the farmer so that they could farm more, I think it would kind of leverage the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could, I want to say a couple of things from the world I know better, which is I'm a political science professor, and my specialty is public opinion and political communication. And everything we are talking about here is like talking about campaigns and reaching people. And I want to piggyback on what we just heard. All research on campaigns shows that when you don't have a lot of time with people and you're campaigning and using media, you cannot change people's minds about who they are and what they want. What you can do is reach in and find the thing that they think they are and the thing that they want that you are offering better than other people, and help them with that. And, you know, if you look around these Hollywood squares, most of the people here don't look a lot like, say, the people we're trying to reach in a rural population of mostly older people, mostly quite conservative. Most of the people in my rural area probably haven't been to college. I know a whole lot of our people haven't. So there's a gap between usually those of us who are doing this and doing the advocacy and running these wonderful things and have, you know, we're working for extension or whatever, and the people who are out there. And so one of the things we always try to remind ourselves, and we don't know entirely how to do this, is to reach people and not look arrogant and not look like we know a whole lot more and use big words, and not show how much smarter we are because we know about local food and sustainability and climate change and all of that, but they want healthy food, clean food, best price, and we have trouble meeting market basket and Sam's in that way. A lot of people come in and say, why are you so goddamn expensive? And we have conversations about the exploitation of them and their neighbors, and why Sam's can charge so little and what the pricing means. So I think we really, and I include us, need to think a lot more about really who are the people we're reaching and what do they want, that where we can offer pieces of that and really bring people in by serving them.
Thank you for that, Virginia. I think that leads really well into the new narrative from Food Solutions New England. Is a great tool for everybody. I'm going to put the link in the chat, but to kind of, in anything that we're framing and talking about and trying to reach people, meet them where they are and educate them, you know, finding that core of what they're concerned about and using that to reach them and to help get them involved in what's going on. So I'm going to share that right now. We do have only about 2 minutes left. So anything, last thoughts, questions, concerns?
So Colleen, I just want to jump in and provide a little more context for the new narrative in case folks don't know. So this is Food Solutions New England, spent a couple of years actually doing research with people around New England about eating and buying food and what messages really resonate with people in a diverse spectrum of people. And so all of those learnings from that research project are there, and it's great. I also want to plug, we don't have it here in the agenda, but last year Daniel and some of our other partners put together a New Hampshire Eats Local toolkit with messaging and social media, examples of social media posts about eating locally and how it supports your neighbors and helps strengthen your community. And so that's another great resource that's on our website too.
I'll share that as well real quickly.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us for this. This was awesome. I really like that we were able to have a conversation and share and chat. So this,
yeah.
Thank you again.
And also one other thing, sorry, that we can continue this conversation. Actually, during our next session, there's going to be supporting local farm food and fish businesses. And the focus will be, again, about some of those shifting market channels that happened during the pandemic, how to hold on to those. But the focus will be more about marketing and kind of aggregation and networks and how we can work together on those marketing new marketing and innovative ideas. So I encourage you guys, if you want to continue with this conversation, to join us for that as well.
Will we be able to continue to access the Jamboard so we can share it with our peeps later?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll at that link, please do. And we're going to follow up at post gathering with all the great information and resources that we have. So you'll get those as well. The links to the next sessions, which will start at 11:45, are in there. I'm also going to drop the agenda as well, so you have that. And again, thank you guys so much. This is really awesome, really inspiring.
Thanks, everybody.
One.